fashion design insights, but this includes textiles and a number of things as well. I might have to move us around so that you can see. So what is fashion design? And I've written quite a lot, and I might not read out everything because it might take too long. I need to keep an eye on the time. Fashion design is the art and technology of creating clothing. It's got many stages: concept creation, sketching, fabric selection, pattern making, garment construction, and final presentation. It doesn't only focus on physical creation of garments, but also cultural and social influences that shape trends and styles. There is a theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, about, it's not about fashion, it's obviously psychology, but it's about the needs of people. We need warmth, we need protection, we need to belong, we need self-esteem, self-actualization to be the best we can. And fashion's a huge part of that, communicating through what we wear to a greater audience, but it's also can please yourself. And there's nothing like the pandemic that changed everything. So that is quite a lively image of a collaboration between Supreme and Louis Vuitton. I had to check, probably 80-20 of my career has been based in women's wear, but obviously menswear, and increasingly has become important into my career, has become part of it. So fashion in our society, it's culture, identity, it impacts the economy, self-expression, social changes, lots of different areas. And I picked this again because what's happened since, 2020 is athleisure became huge at that point, and obviously the importance of key people who influence quite often the way we think and dress and view ourselves, good or bad. Designer influence, I don't know if any of you watched Killing Eve, but the fact that having links with designers and costume designers made a huge difference to Molly Goddard's career, and basically launched her career just by having a dress in a TV series, and made a huge difference. So the facts of the British industry is that it's worth about £21 billion to the economy. And there's a spin-off of that of about 16 billion based on tourism and IT and all the rest of it. So it's on a par with the food industry. So that gives you a sort of image of where the money goes. And the British industry is tiny in compared to, Italy, America, Asia. So, but it's highly influential. It includes fashion designers, textile production, fashion retailers, magazine publishers, journalists, marketeers, bloggers, communicators, photographers, so many people. So different types of designer. This is changing all the time. You've got high street designers. Do you think somebody could turn could you turn your mic off, or are you trying to ask something? Let's just check if anybody else didn't want to join. Don't worry too much. I hope you can all hear me. I've just lost my presentation. There it is. So just saying that high street designers, quite commercial, media-led. A lot of people say shop and copy, fast fashion. It's got a bit of a bad reputation, but we all probably wear most of it. Ready-to-wear or pret-a-porter designers are mainly the people you see with the runway, who design for the runways, and it's a smaller scale production. Haute couture is more it used to be based in Paris exclusively, but obviously we've got more people around the globe who make bespoke and made to measure one-off designs for the mega rich quite often. But I think this artisan kind of making of clothes, the designing of clothes is becoming more and more important, and also it's being enhanced by the use of technology going forward, and it's going to be probably a more important area going forward. Technical designers, and I'll explain what they are coming forward. That's the link from the concept and the ideas and the sketch right through to production. Textile designers who create patterns, fabrics, surface textures, embroideries, materials used in collections, and obviously accessory designers as well. So what does fashion designer do? I've got some, this was one of my favorite collections from the spring summer row from spring 2025. They make concepts, trend analysis, sketching, fabric selection. They create something called a prototype, which is the first initial design in 3 dimensions. They adjust and refine. Huge amount of collaboration, production, marketing and branding, managing a business if you're a small operation, and hopefully using sustainable and ethical considerations in your design. Concept research and trend analysis. This is a massive business in the fashion industry. Everybody wants to be a trendsetter, research trends, present trends. It's probably the nicest thing and the nicest part of the job. There's some people call fashion forecasters. The biggest at the moment is WGSN, but to get their trends is about £20,000 a year. So only the biggest companies can afford to employ them. Trend Union, which is the image that you're seeing there, people like Pecklers, but there's many, many others. You might look at historical references and nostalgia, your own memories or nostalgic memories. A lot of people who are my age maybe hark back to the 80s or even earlier, the 70s, and things that their parents wore or they had when they were growing up. Or historical by visiting a museum or an art gallery, references, or looking at a film from the 1930s, for instance. That leads us into art, films and literature. Everything is inspirational, nature, travel. Social and economic, which obviously I was sort of the tail end of the rise of punk. But if you think back to then, that was born of really rebellion. The fact that people had no money, there was no jobs. It was a recession trend. It was an interesting trend because it was born from nothing and kicking against the establishment and the government. So grunge might have been seen to be the same kind of idea. People, famous people technology, including AI. Increasingly now, AI is becoming part of designing and researching. Emotions, street fashion, market research, or a blend of many of those little snippets of bits and pieces that are all brought together to tell a story or a narrative. So, market research. A lot of people will go round stores, whether they're small boutiques or big stores like Selfridges or lovely stores like Liberties, and they might go internationally or in their hometown. Increasingly now we can do that online. You can go and see many different brands. You can see what they're offering. You can do research. You can just see what everybody's doing online. It's much faster paced than when I started in the industry, when you used to have to get on a train or a flight and go and see what other countries were creating. So you shop the market for inspirational samples, for fabric, colour, construction detail. When I was doing my master's, they said to us, go to designer stores, try on the clothes. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't possibly do that. I can't afford to step into one of those designer shops. And you were encouraged to do it because you realised what the fabric felt like, how it was made, how it looked, how it felt. Probably half of them I couldn't even get into myself. But, it's that kind of feeling of touching one-off designs that you've never seen to understand how they're made. So designers also now, to be more original, visit vintage fairs, look at charity shops. Many of the shows have vintage sections now, obviously with the increase in sustainability, not waste, or the nostalgic looking back in the past. Designers pick colour. There's also an industry about colour trend. They create colour palettes. They create colour forecasting. There's a number. Some of you might have heard of Pantone, obviously using things like digital programs. You might use different ideas for colour, Scotic. Trends are set usually, or they used to be set about 2 years in advance of what the market was going to do, to tell you what was going to be the next big trending colour. This one at the bottom here, this sort of green, is meant to be the next big colour in 2026, I think it was. But you can see how colours plays a big important role in the work, and backed with inspirational images. Sorry, I'm moving the little box around a little bit. And again, I picked off 2 colour trends, both. One was for Coloro and one was for a fashion prediction called Fashion Snoops, who were telling us these are going to be the big colours for 25-26. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Cherry lacquer seems to be here already, and so does retro blue. So I'm not sure it's very far-reaching forecasting, but they look pretty. The other thing that happens is you select fabrics. There are fabric shows. People go, this picture in this middle is a very scary picture. It's called Premier Vision. It happens twice a year in Paris. And all the mills from all over the world come and show their fabrics. And there's more than one hall that looks like this. There might be 2 or 3. They come from Italy, from China, from wherever, to show their fabric collections, and designers go and choose collections for their next season. Sometimes they might come to the office and show their collection if you're a really big influential designer, but many people go and select them. There's also, they take these all over the world. There's one in Shanghai, New York, Paris, LA. But again, you can get information, a certain amount of information online. And there's also fabric yarn ones. There's something called Pitti Filati, which is in Florence twice a year, which is a lovely show because it's in Florence. And designers, business people get together and choose their qualities for the next coming season, or get inspiration for the next coming season. They might also see things like print, embroidery, and textures that inspire them. And then usually the next step would be to make a mood board. These are actually mood boards made by our students, OCAD students, throughout their time with us. So these communicate ideas, theme, colour, texture, fabric. And they're meant to be, whether you're pinning things onto an inspirational wall, doing it digitally, or by hand and collage and sticking and pasting, they are there to tell your story, and it's unique to you. Even if you're picking up your own drawings, your own sketches, your own fabrics that you've made and pulling them together, you're telling a story and communicating to other people what's the story of your collection on your ideas. And it can be a great joy and selling point to your collection, and it's a good communication tool. A lot of people use sketchbooks. Probably when you're a professional designer, this is the one thing that slides. You don't really get time to work in sketchbooks very often, but it's a joy perhaps when you're on holiday, or to do this to change your ideas, to move your ideas. And again, some of these are specifically for fashion projects, are done by students on the course. You know, this was the Mother Nature. Some of you might be starting or have done it already. This one at the top here was from somebody's final major project, which was about pearls. And you'll see some of the students' work as you go through as well. So you might see some of the development of these ideas. So sketchbooks are a little bit of a luxury if you're working in the fashion industry. These are also design development. So you will start to make fabrics, whether it's print design, fabric manipulations, weaving, knitting, crochets, or a combination of all of them. This was a textile student who created a range of textiles for a final project, but used tassels. This was a final project as well. It started off sort of based on consumerism and then went into sort of more sort of bright colours and pop art, but a real joy to see and show lots of ranges of techniques. The next thing that a designer would do is start sketching. So encouraged to use something called a croquis, which is derived from the French, meaning a quick sketch. Many use now digital drawing or tracing from figures, men's or women's, children, different sizes and shapes. You can get something for everything, which is good. Some people develop their ranges by sketching in pencil, and some more fluid, maybe working on a digital program. And then many students start to colour them up. These two on the side have been done by hand, using mainly, I think, watercolour and crayon and linear ideas. This was from the Mother Nature project. This was from the Pearl project I referenced earlier. That was a lovely project. She based on quite sort of historical clothing, and that was a final project, and this was also from Mother Nature using digital. Both of these obviously have used digital techniques to put fabrications onto their work. Fabric manipulation, again, foundation student work. So people who are working to create textures and manipulations that, again, tell their story. It's the ones on the right are really just really showing the fabric and how it's used. The ones on the left are showing how they imagine the fabrics would be used on the body or placed on the body, and some of the techniques which they've draped onto a mannequin, but you might use yourself. I never had a mannequin ever. I think when I was doing fashion, I used to have to drape it on myself or a friend or anybody passing by. You know, you can use other tools. You don't have to use a mannequin at all. I think I got a really old store dummy and used one of those for a long time. I think somebody had thrown it out or something, and I used that. Then you start to create prototypes. Many fashion designers work from something called a block, which is an initial, it's this using this sort of fabric here, pattern that works. And what they do is they create a block for a pair of trousers or for a straight skirt or A-line skirt or a jacket, and it gives you something to base it off. And they're cutting cards because they're used again and again and again to create patterns. This is more my kind of world, which is draping, where you pin fabric to create the construction using jersey. This is particularly using jersey because it drapes and it falls and it's fluid. But you can see how pinning can create different shapes, details and structures. This one's quite nice because it actually just uses waste material and plastic. So again, you can use different materials to do it. It's traditionally done and called making a toile, which you use calico to do it. And it means you can draw on it, you can pin it, you could staple it. But once you unravel it, it becomes the basis of your pattern, which you will cut in pattern paper. It's a very technical process, and there's specific designers who do pattern cutting and are incredibly good at it, and work in tailoring. This is another student who used a small mannequin to show work that has been placed to create, using the same fabric, multi-placing ideas to create different looks. She used paper at times. It was all linked with heritage and folklore stories of China. But she used both digital processes and paper processes to see how she could place things on a body. It's quite nice to see the relevance of some of the images that she used as well within that. This is the same student who then went on to create flat sketches. Flat sketches can be done rendered by hand, or they can be done on something that's called Illustrator or other linear vector drawing tools, which give the construction front and back and the details of where things are created. You can see here this is probably simpler. She's done the jacket front and back, the trousers. She started to show where the zipper is, if there was pockets. This is the start of producing a garment, and this is the start of something a technical designer might do as well as a designer. Most designers want to move away from this time-consuming technical work because they want to be free, create moods, draw and sketch and use fabrics. But this is the very sort of specifics of what a garment would look like, and the first of the communication to a factory. So it said here, flat sketching, selecting trim, which is huge, factory communication and making prototypes, Quite often selecting trim is the first job that you get when you're a junior designer, ordering and selecting trim, which is buttons, zips, hook and eye, whatever it takes to make a garment. Also, designers create something called a tech pack. It's a specification and construction. Now, this is deep technical stuff, but we all have to do it. And it's a sheet that goes to the factory and shows you how a garment is constructed. All the measurements, points of measurements. This is just off Google, but I do them, but mine aren't very beautiful, so I didn't put one of mine up on there. It says what the fabric is, it says the trim, and it's the start of your prototyping. So this is what the factory used to make a garment and the start of the prototyping and making samples. You would then get your sample back from a factory or your pattern cutter or your machinist, and then you start to do fitting. So this could move into a technical designer's role. Somebody who's very technical, who doesn't enjoy so much the drawing and the choosing fabrics, but likes fitting and perfecting garments. It's very specific and takes quite a long time. They do fitting, sizing, grading across sizes, labeling, packaging. They might conduct wear testing where people actually wear the garments to see if they're fit for purpose. And then they hand over to a production team who get it produced and delivered on time. So this is more sort of prêt-à-porter designing or fast fashion kind of designing. And then a huge part of a designer's role is collaboration. It might be pattern cutters, sewing machinists, textiles designers, technicians. There's a role called product development, which is quite often used in companies as the liaison between designers and production. They're sort of the people in between production, buyers, merchandisers. Some of these roles you might not know, some of them you may have heard. And if you want me to explain them a little bit more afterwards, we can. And then moving into the photographer's role, stylists, getting images into magazines, onto the internet, onto advertising, an art director who would coordinate and instigate the ideas for the whole shoot or even for a runway show, journalists, PR, branding, social media, and e-commerce, you could get involved with an awful lot of those areas and have to communicate with them for whatever reason. It could be just writing a blurb that you see in a catalogue describing the garment, or it could be working in a fashion show, to ensure that your designs look the best. One of my first experiences in fashion was I worked at as a production assistant. I think that's what our title was at John Galliano when he was a young designer, and I was there creating flowers that went into inserts of jackets and rouleau loops, very thin straps that went onto camis. I learnt a huge amount, but I stayed and I was studying at my MA, and I went on to dress on the fashion shows. I helped with getting all the accessories together, and then I ended up going back there and working there for a couple of years, designing knitwear that was used on the runway and sometimes making it. So it was a huge insight into the industry at a high level. So very, very creative. And then some photography. I mean, this is 2 shoots that students have taken. This was part of the Pearl collection that I showed, which was a transgender collection based on pearls. And this was one of the projects for Good Earth, which was creating something out of rubbish. It was just a fantastic image that you could see in any magazine. Another huge important part of a designer's life now is sustainability and the focus on sustainable practices, using eco-friendly materials. Customers are much more savvy on wanting to know what things are made of, wanting to know that the animals that made camel or cashmere were treated well. It's all very, very important. Or the factory workers who are making the garments are treated well. It's all part of the cycle that it's got a huge way to go. It's the tip of the iceberg at the moment, but many designers are forging techniques and ideas forward and selecting ecological fibres in their work. And this was just a fabulous image of using blankets to wrap somebody up. And for me, that went back to sort of Maslow's theory of, I don't know, protection or warmth. It's just a really fabulous image. Originality, obviously, it's quite hard. I put a couple of shots from Hussein Shanian, who is a fantastic conceptual original thinker in the design world. He's like an unsung hero who probably many of you have never heard of, but he does amazing things. He did this sort of conceptual show that was based on wearable furniture, and it was very entertaining, very unusual, and very groundbreaking at the time. So it's hard to be original because there's so much information out there that bombards you, but there is room for originality. And if you are applying to fashion college, fashion university, or setting yourself up as a designer, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that spark of freshness, something that they've not seen before. So it's quite something that is good to develop and develop your own ideas. I just put this slide in. What's the future of fashion? To be quite honest, I was reading through this and I thought, well, this is where we are at the moment. So I'm thinking about you guys, who some of you might be in your late teens, early 20s, some of you older, but you could have a career and be in 2020, well, get this right, 2050, which seems like a lifetime away, but it's halfway through the century. but what's the fashion landscape going to be like there? And these are a few things that people are talking about: sustainability being a top priority, digitalization and technology and AI, using immersive experiences within fabric creation, technology, video, but also optimizing things like fitting and wastage and all these things that a sustainable world it's important. Personalization and customization, again, going back to that bespoke kind of idea of couture dressing, making things unique for people, using 3D scanning, things made to measure. Again, inclusive society, we're not all the same shape. Not one size fits all. We're not square pegs in round holes, but making it unique to you. Gender neutral and inclusive fashion mainstream. I was looking at the figures for that for the Paris runways, how many top designers are using inclusive models, and it's very low. It's still just at the start of this, and we've got a long, long way to go. Secondhand and rental fashion is obviously gaining in importance, and it's just going to become more mainstream.